In the last week, I gave pretty much the same plan to 3 different brands to support in going from roughly $1,000 a day in sales to $10,000 a day in sales, which would back out to a run rate of about 3.65 million per year. And this is that plan. It is the Minimalist plan. So brand number 1 is currently doing about $1,200 per day on direct to consumer via Facebook. Brand number 2 is doing roughly the same amount when you're looking at platform attributed spend and sales. And brand number 3 is doing a little bit more at roughly $1,400 per day. And between these 3 brands, the plan is very, very similar given the circumstances. So step 1 of the plan is to create some input targets based on where they currently are. So as an example, if right now 20 active ads yields approximately $1,000 per day in sales, then some very simple math and assumptions can allow us to make the conclusion that perhaps 40 active ads could lead to $2,000 per day in sales. Similarly, if we double that again to 60 active ads, we could presume $3,000. Now, is this perfect? No. It'll break down where to get to potentially this number over here. Maybe it's not 40. Maybe instead it's something like 70. But the point is to not necessarily get it perfect. The point is to set expectations so that we aren't just saying this week we are going to make 10 ads, and then next week we are going to make 30. And the week after we get busy, so we don't make anything. The week after that, we do 5. The idea is to have some reasoning for why it is that we have an expectation each week or each month for the deliverables that our team needs to put through the system. And there's 2 benefits that comes out of this. One is we can address this lack of consistency. And the second thing it can help with is setting our expectations so that if we get it wrong and it actually takes, let's say, 80 ads to yield the $2,000 per day, then all we need to do is adjust the deliverables that we're outputting. And as a result of that, make decisions on how we're going to spend our time and how we're going to spend our resources around probably the most impactful part of your business, which is your ads. Because most of us rely on ads to drive the distribution that we need to make sales and profit. Is step 2 in the prescription is to use what I call the minimalist scaling flywheel. And that flywheel looks a little bit like this. We start with leverage. And by leverage, what I mean by that is using existing resources before creating new assets so that we maximize the value of what we've already put our time, money, and energy into. So a big example of that is if you have a Google Drive folder with lots of assets, these lines are assets where they are different images, different videos, different GIFs, stuff from, let's say, your customers, so your UGC, stuff from your staff. So either you or people on your team who have filmed things over the years, or stuff from influencers, or stuff that you made 3 years ago. All of this can be fair game for what you put in your ad account or what you edit together to use. I've found when working with brands, even brands that are only 2 years old or even a few months old, they tend to have way more assets than they realize that are just sitting right in front of them. The second part of the flywheel, come down this way, is optimize. And a core theme to optimizing is the tactic of remixing. And by remixing, I don't necessarily just mean changing a color on your ads or just swapping headlines that are at the top of your ads. What I mean by that is being a little bit more strategic with the changes that you're making. So for example, if you have a video that is working well, and these are the timestamps of different sections of the video, what you could potentially do is take a look at the very beginning of it and you use another really good video and see if beginning of it works well on this one. Is it iterative? Yes, in some ways, but we're trying to look for the intersection where the iterations that we're doing, they're both impactful and also easy to implement, which gives us zone right here. Because what's easy to implement is not always impactful, and what's impactful is not always easy to implement. We aren't looking for changes just for the sake of changes. We are looking for changes that we think have a good chance of leading to the outcomes that we're after. So as another example, let's say we're going back to this video that we know is a winner. What we could potentially do is go to this old Google Drive that has lots of assets and see if there's anything we can pull on to the back of what we know works well already. Trying to be as minimalist as possible when it comes to not starting from scratch. Then we move on to the next portion of the flywheel, and that is to expand. And the concept here is to scale. And what I mean by scaling is best illustrated with an example. So let's say you're selling dog shampoo and you have a testimonial ad that is working well with golden retrievers. Scale in this context refers to taking and knowing that that concept works well and seeing if it works well with, let's say, Labrador retrievers or poodles or beagles. We basically take what has proven to work well in the previous steps of optimize and leverage and see if we're able to scale it out. And then after that, we hit the last piece of the flywheel, which is innovate. And what you'll notice is that we've gone through 3 steps of the flywheel before we get to the portion where we're actually innovating and coming up with new stuff. So the keyword here for innovate is fresh. It's doing stuff that you haven't done before, and ideally you haven't seen other brands do before in your industry. In some circles, we would call this net new concepts. And right now there's a lot of talk about having a bias towards net new stuff, which I am sort of neutral on. I do think that there is value in doing both. And I do know that brands do see mixed results where some do very well with a flywheel like this, where a lot of it is iterative, and some do very well with just a lot of net new stuff. But I'm giving you both because for the net new stuff that's over here, we have a framework for that as well, which is part of, you can consider that step 3 of this prescription to 10K a day. So there's 4 ways to do the innovate step, which we're calling net new here. So the first one, a very simple one called contrast. And the essence of this is flipping the script, which at its core is doing the opposite of what's expected. So as an example, if every pet shampoo ad that you see in the market that your competitors are doing that you've done have been heartfelt, then contrasting, maybe going the opposite way, where instead of being heartfelt, it's sarcastic and comedic. And a good example of this that I've seen comes from the guys who make the shirt that I'm wearing right now, which is True Classic. They're known for making very comedic ads as opposed to just harping on features and benefits. So number 1 is contrast. Number 2 is cross-pollinate. And the essence of this is borrow and apply. And by that, I mean borrowing from other industries what's working well and bringing it over to yours. An example of that could be, carrying on with our dog shampoo example, is going luxury perfume and taking concepts where very high-end advertising, where there's a lot of luxurious imagery, is being borrowed and applied to dog shampoo, and the imagery is nothing like you've ever seen before in the industry. That's cross-pollinate. The next one is challenge. And the essence of this one is to disrupt expectations. So for example, for a very long time, it was commonly known and commonly understood that skipping breakfast was bad for you. But then came along intermittent fasting, where not only did the intermittent fasting movement claim that it's not unhealthy for you, but it's actually better for you. And here's all the science explaining why that is. Another example, for a very long time, vegetables and even veganism became popular for health. And then of course, over time, carnivore and being meat-based became the new trending topic that challenged those assumptions and disrupted the audience on what to expect by giving a new, bold, and I'd say controversial viewpoint that again was also seemingly backed by some level of science. And we got one more, so that's challenge. So the last one, and let me just expand the table to fit it in, is to clash. And this one's an easy one to remember because the essence of it rhymes with clash, which is smash, where you smash together two things that are seemingly unrelated and don't normally go together. So jumping back to the dog shampoo example, instead of a traditional, really family-oriented style dog shampoo in the bathroom, cleaning the dog sort of scene, instead maybe there's an action film style movie trailer sort of vibe to the ad creative. So the essence of everything here when it comes to net new is that new and different is better than just being better and claiming that you're better. And this framework here allows you to come up with a way to be new without actually having to force yourself to be creative and think of new ideas from scratch. So if we zoom back out and come back to this flywheel, we actually have a really nice system where everything feeds upon the previous step. So the new innovations and the net new stuff that you do can then be used for leverage, which then can be optimized, which you can then expand, and then you can come back around to innovating again. And so zooming out to the plan, the 3-step plan, this is it. It's minimalist in its essence. And that's the point. Because if you have your unit economics dialed, you have an ad account in good standing, and you have inventory, a very reliable lever that you can pull to impact these numbers is your advertising. You don't need a lot of complexity in direct-to-consumer to do numbers like this. Because in direct-to-consumer, one of the things that's great about it is that you can scale up without scaling your OpEx or your operating expenses. So with the team that you currently have, whether that's you on your own, or whether that's you and a few virtual assistants, or that's you and a small team, some agencies, you can get quite far without scaling up the resources and your fixed expenses to get to 10K a day with lots of simplicity. If you like this kind of stuff, just check down below in the description and we'll have a link to our newsletter where every single day, something like this is sent to your inbox. See you in the next one.